Okay, so the things you're gonna need for wheel throwing: your bucket, your wheel, your clay. You're gonna need a wire tool. You're gonna need your wood knife, a needle tool, and a metal rib. So we're gonna grab our clay. Wheel speed, I already checked what it's doing. Water content, I don't want water on there. I like to just tap that down. Cut that in half. It should be about that big. So about 1.5 pounds. If you're not tapping that down or patting that down, you're causing yourself problems. You're causing yourself to lift up. And I don't think that's what you want. We're going to start the wheel. Elbows are in my body position. My thumbs, the pads of my thumbs are going to push straight down. My pinkies are going to go and wrap around. I'm not too worried about the bounce, but if you want to get rid of some of that, just take your left hand and lean in just a little bit. And the clay will line up to your hand. So you need to be firm. And now we're going to cone it up. So I sealed it. No shadows at the bottom. I'm going to cone it up. Push with 7 o'clock with one hand, catch, flatten, lift, and roll. Push at the bottom, get the clay moving, flatten your hands, lift up, and roll over. My right hand is going to go on top, creating a little curve. My left thumb is going to go right next to the middle point so that my right hand can touch. It's really important that our hands are touching. My left hand is not way down, and it's not way up. And as I start to press this down, the clay is going to move into my left hand, and my left hand is going to swell or move outward, not like this, but just as your hand just kind of collapses, it moves out. Gently press down. When we get down to the bottom, if it's still wobbly, and it probably will be, we're going to keep our hands in that same position, and we're going to refine it. So I'm going to push in a little bit, it moves up, it's hitting my right hand just a little bit. I'm going to push down, it's hitting my left hand. Now as we're doing this, when I say hitting, it means it's hitting it, but I allow it to move. If I'm pushing down and in at the same time, the clay doesn't know what you're trying to do, and it'll push it in any open spot it has, and it'll create a wobble or an oval. So we want to contain the clay between 2 points. Left hand pushes in, my right hand guides it up, right hand pushes down, my left hand guides it out. And we're just waiting for it to kind of give us a sigh of relief. And we're going to open it. My left thumb is going to come right off of center, from me to the center. Remember that. A lot of you are still starting over here and coming towards you. Me to the center. My right index finger goes on my thumb, my middle finger goes next to it. My elbows are down, my clay's pretty wet. I'm going to push down and in, my fingers are slightly bent. I get about halfway down and it's starting to stick a little bit, so I'm going to add some water. All I did was take my hands off and add water. I'm not stopping the wheel. I'm going to push down to the bottom. Now, if you're getting too thin or too thick, stop your wheel, grab a needle tool, put it in there, put your finger down at the bottom, and see how thick it is. Okay, and if you're like, oh, that's way too thin, next time make sure it's a lot thicker than that, check it, and go, oh, I can go a little thinner. But it should be 1 to 2 of your wood knife thicknesses, okay? Thinner than that, and it's too thin. Thicker than 2, it's just too thick. But for now, it's better to have it a little thick than thin. All right, a little side note. I always pinch my rim here, and I'm just going to press down on my rim. It saves me from having any cracking or a lot of cracking. Now, the next step. I'm gonna open towards me. Ring finger and middle finger are gonna pull towards my thumb. I'm gonna come in here, my thumb is not moving, it's staying right where it's at. I'm gonna pull towards there. Now, here's a little theory. It's not always the case, but it's close. You can take the water out while I talk. I open this up to where I want the outside of my cylinder to be when I'm done. So the inside right now is where the outside will be when I'm done. So let's measure that. So if I come in here, I'm right there. I'm gonna flip that around. I'm about that much from the end of my needle tool to where it's on the table. So that's my basic measurement. Now, we opened it towards us, ring finger, middle finger towards our thumb. My index fingers are gonna come over here to 430. Thumbs are down at the bottom touching. Index fingers straight across from each other. I do it through a sponge, but I want you to maybe count in your head. As I do this, I'm pushing in, pushing in, pushing in. So I haven't even started lifting yet. A lot of you are still pushing and lifting. Okay, we've got to push and let that clay catch up to us. Right here. And we're going to lift up. If we lift straight up, it's going to go out. So I'm going to take my right hand and tilt inward. Slowly letting go. Whatever you're doing, double or triple the time. That's probably a good philosophy. All right, next. Down at the bottom, my elbows are into my rib cage, into my hips if possible. Push at the bottom. And I'm just grabbing the clay in between my index fingers. And I'm going to lift. Slowly up, my thumbs are touching. Get to the top. Roll in just a little bit. Now, that was 2 pulls. If yours takes you 4 or 5 or 6, it's perfectly fine. It shouldn't take you 20. If it's taking you 20 pulls, you're not pushing and holding enough at the bottom. So we have ourselves a nice cylinder. Take the water out, and then this is how we're going to finish it up. We're going to use our metal rib. And we're going to rib it. So we're going to take all the extra clay off. Super important before or after I rib it that you've come in here and you've taken this water out. If you're not practicing taking the water out, you're going to cause cracking on your projects. The water takes the clay and expands the clay, and when it dries, there's openings, and they call them S-cracks. They look like little S's. All right, just going to support the rim. Get your hands to touch if possible. Again, I'm not rushing anything. I'm just trying to relax into this and move the clay, or do whatever I need to do with the clay. I'm not moving clay here. I'm just gently compressing the clay. But you do it close to you. Next one, I'm going to do my wood knife. It's going to come straight down. Well, you can sort of see that. It's going to come straight down. A little side note, the wood knife, you need to put it in the water. If you have a dry knife and you go to put this in, it's going to catch, it's going to warp your cylinder. So we're just going to slowly, I'm holding it like a pencil, running it down my left hand. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Hang out there for a minute. What I don't do is start on the outside and push towards my cylinder. So I'm just going straight down, stop the wheel. Now you could come in here and move this away without the wheel spinning. I just come in here with my wheel spinning. So before I cut it, my cylinder should be dryish looking, should be fairly straight up and down. If there's a little bit of a wobble or a little bit in and out, it's fine. But we're not making bases, we're making cylinders. It should look clean and crisp on the inside and outside. It should not, see this outside of my wheel, it should not look sloppy like that. If you have a lot of extra slip around, you need to take it off. If you're not taking your slip off and we take our projects off, well, one, the clay itself isn't going to be as compact, and so it's going to kind of wobble in our hands. Two, that water is going to soak in, it's going to want to create cracking in our projects. So we've got to learn to dry it and compress the clay by taking the water off. Now, before I cut it, come over here. There's my measurement. I set that on there. So if I told you the inside, when I open that up, should be about what the outside is when I'm done. Does that make a little bit more sense? The outside is right where it's lined up right here. That is right where the inside, when I opened it towards me, was. So that measurement. Because what happens is we're pushing in and up, in and up. So we're bringing something that's like this, and we're closing it in or bring it towards the center. Okay, here we go. Now, you're going to do this. Halfway through, from the bottom, push it down as hard as you can. Revisit that. You're going to take this, wrap it around your fingers. You're going to push down with your thumbs. If you're just kind of grabbing and pulling, you're going to get a piece of clay that's not at the very bottom. So we're going to come down here, push down, pull towards us. I'm going to lift straight up. Now, let's set that aside. I'm going to cut this one off too. And then I'm going to start a new one. So what I'm going to do now, on my wheel up here, whatever works for you, you're going to grab your needle tool and you're going to set it just like that. So it looks like that. And that's going to show me a lot of things. But it shows me what you're doing on throwing, how you're doing. It shows me how tall it is. So from here to where that needle starts is just about 5 inches. Okay, so we're looking for a 5-ish inch cylinder that is about 3-ish inches wide, about 1/4 of an inch thick, with nice even transitions all the way up. So we're looking for that, okay? That's what we're looking for. Now think about how far you've come in the first 4 days on the wheel. And now I'm going to open this. I push through my sponge so I don't have to add water to it. I'm also going really fast, I need to slow down. So the first 4 days, if you're getting anywhere near this, you're doing great. If you're not, and you're getting something a little floppier, a little wider, a little less centered, you're doing fine. Pull this towards me. Add some water. And it'll lift up. Now, let's talk about grading these really quickly. So what I'm going to do for grading these is, if you make a 6-inch cylinder, you get an A, 5-inch cylinder, you get a B, 4-inch cylinder, a C, 3-inch, I'm just kidding, we're not going to do that. And that's actually how a lot of schools do it. If you can't throw a 6-inch cylinder that's 3¼ inches by a 1/4 inch thick with a perfect transition, you don't get an A on this, and I don't like that at all. So you're gonna make an 8-inch cylinder. It's 2 3/4 inch wide. I'm just kidding on that too. This is how I grade. Okay, so when you turn this in, you're gonna take a photo of this, okay, whatever it is. And so you have 3 more days on this. So let's say you start on, Monday, on Wednesday. You're gonna go Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, right? And you're gonna spend 3 days while everyone else is making their mugs, and you're gonna make the best cylinder you know how. And when you turn it in, you're gonna take a photo of it. You can take photos on Friday. Well, you can take photos on Wednesday too if you want. Because sometimes we start throwing, and then the second day we're like, oh, I sucked today, but yesterday I did so good. So if you get a decent cylinder, take a photo of it. Okay, you're not done. You need to do a better cylinder if possible. And then Friday, you're gonna do it again. Tuesday, you're gonna do it again. And if you wanna send me multiple photos, you certainly can, okay? But you're gonna turn them in on Google Classroom. And when we look on Google Classroom, what we're gonna do is I will look at your attendance on the days you were supposed to be on the wheel. And if you spend 7 days on the wheel, and you really, seems like you tried, as in you were here working. Should we do both of these at the same time? Because we only have 10 minutes. We'll hurry and do that, and then we'll go put those handles on. 6 pound. So if you go ahead and turn them in, and you have a 4½ inch cylinder that's a 1/2 inch thick. Again, I'm telling you, in other schools, that would be a C. I'm not worried about that. What I'm looking for is your effort. And if you have a whatever size 3½, 4-inch cylinder, and it's fairly symmetrical or centered, we can turn those into small bowls. Okay, you're probably not on track to make a medium-sized vase, but if you want to work really hard to get there, you could. But we can take a slightly thick, slightly short cylinder and turn it into a bowl pretty easily. And so we'll do that. If you can do a 6-inch cylinder, 7-inch cylinder, your options of making bowls, bottles, or vases is pretty good. But, and I don't want to say if you can only, but if you've only gotten to the point of being able to make, again, a 4½, 4-inch cylinder, then your options are pretty much bowls, which is fine. Bowls are great. Most of you will choose bowls anyways because we can take them home, we can use them. Small bowls, big bowls, whatever works for you. And a big vase is just wheel speed, water content, body position, pressure. Know your steps, and also know what's going on in your head. So when you fail, and I've failed many, many times on big pieces, you just wedge up more clay and do it again. You pay attention to what you were doing so that you can learn from it. If you're you're not paying attention to what you're doing and not learning from it, you're not going to get any better. We call that reflecting. Reflecting on our learning is probably one of the most important things we should be doing. And it's probably one of the things we do the least. Because it's move on to the next, move on to the next, move on to the next. Stand right there. All right, let's go. So I'm ribbing it to create compression. It's still really thin right there. After the 3 days on the wheel, the next 3 days, we'll do our 3-day rotations while you're making mugs. After that, we'll do another demo on bowls, bottles, and vases. So we'll talk specifically on how to make a vase, how to make a bowl, how to make a bottle. And then you'll have 5 days, 6 days, something like that, to make a small set of something. And we'll talk about trimming. All right, let's go here and do this handle real quick. Head back to the front. Actually, you know what? Just stay where you're at. Bring this stuff back here. It's not too complicated. Okay. So, is that in the shot? So we have our mug. Okay, it's still leather hard. Looks good enough. We have our handles. Okay, there's my little piece. It's stuck to my handle. We have our handles, and then they start to dry, they start to firm up just a little bit. What I like to do, instead of just putting them straight on like this, I put them to the side here and go, okay, that's about the size I want. Okay, maybe a little smaller, maybe a little bigger. What we don't want is a handle that's sticking way out here. So for this one, I would come in here, cut that right there. There. And now it'll go on like that. I usually bend my handles up just a little bit so they're a little more full at the top. Now if we're going to use, let me turn this off. If we're going to use one of these, same thing, it's holding itself pretty well now. While it's on here, I can come in and clean that up. I can come in here and just score it there. that. Put that on and measure it. That'll work. Let's see what this one looks like. This one here, you're gonna cut flush and cut flush like so. And then it's gonna go on like that. Really go on either way. If we came here, it's gonna go on like that. So you see how it's a little more full at the top. That's really important because that's where all the weight goes. So we can put that one on, I kind of like that. So we come in here, we score these. We add some slip. We set it where we think it goes, lining it up. Right there. One thing I'm always cautious about, sometimes I have handles that come above the rim, but I try not to because I like to store my mugs upside down. Right? I don't want to store them this way. I want to store them this way. And so I try not to have my handles go above the rim. So be mindful of that. Or don't. You can store them any way you want. A lot of times we store them hanging from the handle itself. Alright, so I scored that. These are where the slip marks are. Make sure that when you do this, you're paying attention to that you score and slip your handle, but then you score, then you mark it, then you come back and you score it again. And we're just going to clean that up. If you have a fingernail, this is a great time. The wood knife is a great tool. You come in here and just really clean that up. If it's looking a little weak, you can come in here and roll a coil and wrap it around that and smooth that out. On Friday, we'll do another handle demo for those of you who are making your mugs. You'll start making, we'll kind of walk through it, but then we'll do another one so you can kind of see what's happening. That means it's time to go.
Yeah. That's embarrassing.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how embarrassing was that?
0. I don't care.
It really wasn't that embarrassing. And no more embarrassing than like your mom or your grandma where you're at like a play and it rings, but then they actually pick it up and like, hello? And you're like, where are we? Oh, it's just my bill collector. Just kidding, it's my doctor, whatever. All right, so we have our handle. From here, I'll come in, smooth it out a little bit with the sponge, maybe clean up the bottom. On Wednesday, Friday-ish, we'll talk about cleaning up the bottom a little bit more. As it starts to get leather hard, it's super important that you come in here with just a tiny bit of water and smooth out that bottom. That's one of the requirements because you want that to hit the table nice and soft. So we're going to smooth that up. Sign it. What is today? 9/9, 10/9. Oops. 23. I sign every piece of mine with the actual date. I should know. Tomorrow's my son's birthday. 10/10. But I sign every date, the actual date. Because I think it's important to document that something was made on this day. I made something last week on Friday morning. I made something. Friday, I got my 7th grandchild. So, Jovi. Jovi is her name. She's pretty adorable. guess they're gonna call her JoJo, but at least that's what someone, whatever, it doesn't matter. Here we go, signed, ready. Do you have any questions? Don't leave that out. Okay? That handle is gonna dry quick and it needs to be covered, so we're gonna cover that. This is the second mug you need to make, so something with a stencil slash mask. The one after this is combining the two. You decide what that looks like. Maybe you want the arch to actually stick out like an additive something. That might be pretty cool. Do the back, and then you could sculpt a little or add a little part to that. That might be really cool. So, yeah, that's all I got. Time to get out of class. 5 after? Okay. Clean up your stuff. Be ready for